The sand moved wrong. Crix noticed it first, a ripple where no wind blew, a depression that formed too slowly to be natural. He'd been standing on Earth's surface for exactly 43 seconds, long enough for the telemetry to confirm breathable atmosphere, stable gravity, and no immediate radiation threats. Long enough to make his first mistake. He knelt. The grain structure fascinated him. Silicon dioxide, his scanner confirmed, but the texture defied the sterile descriptions in the survey data. Each crystal caught the alien sun differently. He reached down, letting the particles slide between his chitinous fingers. Warm. Rough. The sensation traveled up his arm in ways his environmental suit had never allowed before. Behind him, the scout ship hummed its patient vigil. The rest of the survey team waited in orbit, watching his biometric data, cataloging his discoveries. Standard procedure for first contact with uninhabited worlds. He was the eyes and hands of the collective, the first of his species to touch this particular combination of minerals and starlight. The sand shifted beneath his palm. Not wind. Not settling. Movement. Crix jerked his hand back, but the grains clung to his exoskeleton, spreading with purposeful intent. They flowed up his wrist like liquid, like living tissue, coating his forearm in a thin layer that glittered mockingly in the sunlight. His scanner shrieked warnings he couldn't process fast enough: unauthorized biological activity, unknown chemical reactions, cellular invasion detected. He stumbled backward. The sand followed. It wasn't sand anymore. It was a surface, a skin, a reaching thing that wanted inside. He felt it probing the gaps in his carapace, testing the seams of his breathing ports. Cold flooded his chest. Not temperature, understanding. This world wasn't uninhabited. It was the inhabitant. Scout Crix to survey team. His voice cracked across 3 registers. Immediate extraction required. The planet is hostile. Repeat. The sand covered his throat. Silence replaced his words. Not the silence of communication failure, but the absolute quiet of a mouth that could no longer open. The grains forced themselves between his mandibles, coating his tongue, filling the spaces where speech lived. He tasted earth, mineral and ancient and hungry. His vision blurred. The scanner on his wrist died, screen going dark as the sand consumed its circuits. He tried to run. His legs wouldn't answer. The beach beneath his feet had become quicksand, pulling him down with the inexorable patience of geology itself. Crix thought of the protocols. The careful procedures designed to protect explorers from unknown worlds. Step 1: Atmospheric analysis. Step 2: Geological survey from safe distance. Step 3: Limited surface contact with full protective equipment. Step 4: Retreat at first sign of danger. He'd completed steps 1 through 3 flawlessly. Step 4 was already impossible. The sand reached his eyes. Darkness came with the texture of broken glass and the weight of continents. He felt himself sinking, felt the beach opening beneath him like a throat. Earth was swallowing him whole, processing him grain by grain. His last coherent thought was a question: how many others had landed here? How many scouts had the survey data failed to mention? Then, the pulling stopped. The darkness remained, but the pressure changed. He was no longer sinking. Something held him suspended in the crushing embrace of planetary mass. Through the sand coating his sensory organs, he detected vibration. Footsteps. Heavy ones. Measured. A voice cut through the earth itself. Not sound, but force. Release him. The sand hesitated. Crix felt its reluctance like a physical thing, a predator unwilling to surrender prey. But it obeyed. Grain by grain, it retreated from his body, sliding away with the whisper of infinite particles returning to their places. Light returned. Air. The ability to think in straight lines. He collapsed on suddenly, solid ground, retching silicon dioxide from his breathing passages. His exoskeleton bore scratches where the sand had tried to force entry, shallow gouges that would scar. Evidence. Proof of contact with something the survey data had categorically denied existed. Crix looked up. She stood between him and the predatory beach, armored in materials that made his environmental suit look like ceremonial cloth. Human, his training identified automatically. Indigenous species, technological capability confirmed, threat level undetermined. But the classifications felt inadequate. She wore authority like a second skin, and her posture suggested she'd stopped the planet itself through nothing more than expectation of obedience. Behind her stood others. 4 guards in matching armor, weapons lowered but ready. And one small figure, barely reaching the tallest guard's waist, staring at Crix with eyes too large for its face. The human female, the one who'd commanded Earth itself, spoke again. Her language was harsh, full of consonants his translator struggled to parse. But the device in his suit caught the meaning. You touched consecrated ground without permission. Crix tried to stand. Failed. Tried again. His legs remembered their function on the 3rd attempt. I didn't know. The survey data indicated no intelligent life. No civilization. This world was marked as available for, your survey data was incomplete. She stepped closer. Not threatening. Evaluating. As are you, apparently. What kind of scout lands on an unknown world and kneels in its sand without proper reconnaissance? The small human moved. One of the guards reached out to stop it, but the female raised her hand. Permission granted through gesture. The child walked forward, circling Crix with the fearless curiosity of something that had never learned to recognize danger. It reached up and touched the scratches on his carapace. Crix flinched. Does it hurt? The child asked. The translator made its voice sound like wind chimes, delicate and clear. Yes, Crix admitted. The child's expression changed. Something soft entered its features. The sand was scared. It thought you were going to hurt the world. The female's hand dropped to the child's shoulder. Gentle. Protective. That's enough, Maya. But the child continued, oblivious to protocol. We can fix him. Mama has the medical station. She fixes everyone. Crix looked from the child to the female. Understanding crystallized with the sharp clarity of survival instinct. This wasn't just a human. The armor, the guards, the way she'd commanded a living planet. You're their queen, he said. Her expression didn't change, but something flickered behind her eyes. Amusement, maybe? Or calculation? Close enough, she said. And you're trespassing on humanity's first colony world. Which presents us both with a problem. She glanced at the sky, where Crix's survey team waited in orbit, unaware their scout had just made contact with a species that could weaponize geology. Your people think this planet is empty. Mine have spent 3 years teaching it to trust us again. Someone made an error in your database. The question is, what do we do about it? The child tugged on her armor. We help him, Mama. Right. The queen looked down at her offspring. The expression that crossed her face held too many layers for Crix to interpret. But when she met his eyes again, he saw the decision already made. Right, she said. But first, he's going to explain exactly what his collective wants with our new home. The sand beneath Crix's feet rippled once more. Not attacking. Waiting. The medical station was a prefabricated dome that smelled like antiseptic and human sweat. Crix sat on an examination platform designed for species with internal skeletons, his chitinous frame awkward against the cushioned surface. The Queen, she'd introduced herself as Commander Chin, though her troops called her something else in the spaces between orders, stood by the entrance with 2 guards while a medic cleaned the scratches on his carapace. The child, Maya, hadn't left his side. Did you come from the stars? She asked for the 3rd time. Yes. Are there more of you? Yes. Are they nice? Crix paused. The medic's instruments hummed against his exoskeleton, sealing the microfractures with bonding gel that felt wrong against his natural armor. We're explorers. We seek new worlds for the collective. That's not what I asked? Commander Chen's lips twitched. Almost a smile. Maya, let the medic work. The child ignored her mother with the casual defiance of someone who knew exactly how far they could push. The sand tried to eat you because it remembers the last people who came here. They weren't nice. They took things that didn't belong to them. Maya. The commander's voice didn't rise, but the temperature in the dome dropped. The child fell silent. But her eyes never left Crix, and he felt the weight of her scrutiny like physical pressure. Humans, he was beginning to understand, were dangerous in ways the collective hadn't catalogued. Their young asked questions that bypassed diplomacy and struck at truth. The medic stepped back. He's stable. The sand didn't penetrate deep enough to cause permanent damage, but he'll need to avoid contact with loose soil for at least a cycle. His carapace needs time to fully regenerate. Thank you, Doctor. Chin dismissed the medic with a gesture, then turned her full attention to Crix. Now, you're going to tell me everything about your survey protocols, your collective's expansion policies, and exactly what criteria you use to determine if a planet is uninhabited. Crix's antennae flattened against his skull. Submission posture. His body knew it even if his mind resisted. That information is classified. So is Earth's location. And yet here you are. Chin crossed the dome in 3 strides. She didn't loom, didn't need to. Authority radiated from her like heat. Your people are in orbit above a world that can swallow ships whole if it decides you're a threat. I'm offering you the chance to correct your database before that becomes necessary. I suggest you take it. One of the guards shifted position. Subtle. Crix noticed anyway. These humans moved like his people's military elite, with the economy of motion that came from training and experience. How had the collective missed an entire colony? The survey was automated, he said carefully. Long-range scans indicated no electromagnetic emissions, no orbital structures, no signs of industrial development. By our protocols, that designates a world as uninhabited. Maya spoke from her position beside the examination platform. We don't use those things. Mama says they make too much noise. Chen's expression shifted. Pride mixed with something harder. My daughter is correct. We've maintained strict emission control since planetfall. No satellites. No broadcast communications beyond line of sight. No visible infrastructure from orbit. We learn from Earth's mistakes. Earth is your homeworld? Crix's translator struggled with the possessive pronoun. His people didn't think of planets as belonging to anyone. Was. 300 years ago, give or take. Before the climate finally collapsed and we scattered to the stars. Chen walked to the dome's transparent wall, looking out at the settlement beyond. Crix followed her gaze. Low buildings made from local materials camouflaged against the landscape. Solar collectors designed to look like natural rock formations. A civilization hiding in plain sight. We found this world by accident. A ship malfunction dropped us out of faster-than-light travel in this system. When we scanned the planet, we found something unusual. The sand, Crix said. The sand is a symptom. The planet itself is alive. Not in the way you're thinking, there's no consciousness, no intelligence in the classical sense. But there's awareness. Reactivity. Memory. Chin turned back to face him. The geological record shows evidence of previous visitors. Mining operations. Resource extraction. They took what they wanted and left scars. The planet learned to defend itself. Maya nodded enthusiastically. It made things that eat machines. And people who heard it. The pieces assembled themselves in Crix's mind with the inevitable logic of disaster. Your people made contact. Established communication. We asked permission. Chin corrected. We showed it we were different. We gave before we took. It took 3 years of careful interaction before the planet stopped trying to kill us. She paused. Until today, anyway. When you landed and immediately started touching its surface without introduction. I didn't know, obviously. Chen's tone held no anger, just assessment. Which brings us back to our problem. Your survey team thinks this is an empty world ready for colonization. My people are building a life here with a planetary entity that barely tolerates our presence. If the collective shows up with mining equipment and terraforming drones, Earth will defend itself. Crix finished. And my people won't understand why. They'll escalate. And we'll be caught in the middle of a war between a planet and a spacefaring civilization. Chen walked back to the examination platform. I need to know the collective's response protocols. When you don't report back on schedule, what happens next? Crix's mandibles clicked. Stress reflex. Automated check-in is required every 6 hours. If I miss 2 consecutive reports, the survey team assumes hostile environment and withdraws to safe distance. If I miss 3, he trailed off. They assume you're dead and mark the planet as dangerous. Chen concluded. How long until your next check-in? Crix checked his internal chronometer. 4 hours, 17 minutes. Not enough time. Chen looked at her guards. Lieutenant, get me a secure line to the settlement. I need the council convened in 20 minutes. The guard saluted and left at a run. The second guard remained by the door, statue still. Maya stayed pressed against the examination platform, watching everything with eyes that missed nothing. Chen turned back to Crix. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to make your check-in on schedule and tell your team the planet is undergoing geological assessment. Buy us time. Meanwhile, I'm going to figure out how to explain to my people that our quiet refuge just became a potential flashpoint for interstellar conflict. They won't agree to contact, Crix said. The collective doesn't negotiate with individual colonies. Protocol requires. I don't care about your protocol. Chen's voice stayed level, but Crix felt the force behind it. I care about 300 humans who chose to build a life on a planet that communicates through homicidal sand. I care about preserving that relationship. And I care about preventing a war that neither of our species needs. She leaned closer. So you're going to help me find a way to make this work. Because the alternative is letting Earth eat your entire survey team, and somehow I don't think that's the diplomatic outcome you were hoping for. Maya tugged on Crix's arm. Her hand barely spanned the width of his forearm, but the touch carried weight. You could stay here. Learn about the world. Then, go tell your people the truth. Maya, it's not that simple, Chen said. Why not? The child looked between her mother and Crix with the perfect logic of youth. He made a mistake. We teach him better. He goes home and fixes the mistake. That's how learning works. Silence fell over the dome. Crix stared at the small human who just proposed a solution that violated every diplomatic protocol he'd been taught. Stay on an alien world. Embed with their culture. Learn their secrets. Report back to the collective with information that could change everything. Chen studied her daughter with an expression Crix was beginning to recognize. The look of a leader realizing the youngest member of her team had seen past the complexity to the core truth. That's actually not a terrible idea, Chen said slowly. Modified, of course. We can't keep you here indefinitely. Your team would intervene. But a cultural exchange? A formal first contact that gives both our peoples time to understand the situation? She looked at Crix. How much authority does a scout carry in the collective? None, Crix admitted. I report. Analysts decide. But you're the primary source. Your observations carry weight. Chen's mind was clearly racing ahead, building a framework. If you report back with detailed information about human colonization methods, about the planet's unique properties, about the potential for mutual benefit instead of conflict, they might listen, Crix said. Hope crept into his voice, small and fragile. If the data is compelling enough. If I can demonstrate that this world offers knowledge worth more than raw resources. Knowledge like how to communicate with a living planet? Chen smiled, and this time it reached her eyes. I think we might be able to arrange that. The guard by the door spoke for the first time. Commander, the Council won't approve this. Exposing our location to the collective is exactly what we've been avoiding for 3 years. The collective already found us, Lieutenant. That ship changed the moment Scout Crix touched down. Chen gestured at Crix. Now we choose how this story gets told. By him, with our input, or by automated surveys that see an empty planet and send colonization fleets. Maya bounced on her toes. Can I show him the singing rocks? And the place where the water remembers? And one thing at a time, little explorer. Chen placed a hand on her daughter's head. The gesture was protective and proud in equal measure. First, we need to get through the council meeting. Then, we figure out how to turn a diplomatic incident into an opportunity. Crix flexed his newly repaired carapace. The bonding gel had hardened, leaving his exoskeleton stronger but marked. Scars that would tell a story to anyone who saw them. I should warn you, the collective doesn't easily accept changes to established protocols. Even with compelling data, there will be resistance. Good thing we're human then. Chen's smile turned sharp. Resistance is kind of our specialty. The council chamber was a circular structure dug into the hillside, walls lined with the same smart materials that composed the dome. 20 humans sat in a ring around a central space where Chen stood with Crix beside her. Maya sat in the front row, flanked by guards who looked like they'd rather be anywhere else than watching a child during a security crisis. Crix had never felt so exposed. His people conducted diplomacy through screens and translators, maintaining careful distance. These humans crowded close, their body heat raising the ambient temperature, their eyes tracking his every movement. A gray-haired man in the council spoke first. Commander, this is madness. We came here to escape exactly this kind of attention. And we've been found anyway, Counselor. Chen's voice carried across the chamber without amplification. The question isn't whether we hide anymore. It's how we control the narrative. A woman with burned scars across her face leaned forward. You're proposing we trust the collective? The same organization that strip-mined half the outer colonies? I'm proposing we give them a reason not to. Chen gestured at Crix. Scout Crix made first contact under false assumptions. His people think this planet is empty. We can let them continue believing that until their mining ships arrive, or we can educate them about what they've actually found. Through him? The scarred woman's skepticism was audible. One scout's testimony? Crix's translator caught an undertone in her words. Fear, maybe. Or old anger. He'd seen the settlement's demographics. Too many children, not enough elderly. These weren't pioneers seeking adventure. They were refugees who'd lost something terrible and found something precious. Scout Crix has already experienced Earth's defensive capabilities, Chen said. He has skin data showing the planet's reactive properties. Most importantly, he's alive to report it. She paused. If we send him back with nothing, the collective learns we're here anyway when his ship's logs are reviewed. If we work with him, we shape what information reaches them. Maya stood up. Every head turned. Chen's expression flickered with surprise and something that might have been exasperation. Mama's right, the child said with absolute confidence. Crix didn't mean to hurt anything. He just didn't know. We can teach him. Like we teach everyone who comes here to live. The gray-haired counselor's expression softened. Maya, this is different. We're not talking about new settlers. We're talking about potential invaders. But he's not invading. He's learning. Maya walked to Crix, standing beside him with the fearlessness of complete innocence. The world tried to eat him because it was scared. We stopped it because that's what we do. We show people how to be friends with Earth. A younger council member spoke up. The kid has a point. We've built our entire colony on the principle of mutual respect with this planet. If we refuse to extend that principle to other species, what does that make us? Cautious, the scarred woman said. Alive. Hypocrites, another voice countered. A man with engineer's calluses on his hands. We asked Earth for refuge. Now someone else stumbles here by accident, and we want to send them away without explanation? That's not who we are. The council erupted into debate. Voices overlapped, arguments clashed. Crix watched Chen's face, saw her let it happen. She was reading the room, counting votes, waiting for the right moment. Maya tugged on his arm again. It's going to be okay, she whispered. Mama always figures it out. Crix wasn't so certain. His internal chronometer showed 3 hours until his next required check-in. If the council rejected Chen's plan, he'd have to report honestly: inhabited world, hostile environment, recommend avoidance. The collective would mark Earth as dangerous and move on. But they'd also know humanity was here. Eventually, someone would wonder why a species would hide so completely. Eventually, questions would become investigations. Chen raised her hand. The council fell silent. Here's what I'm proposing, she said. Scout Crix remains here for 72 hours. During that time, we give him controlled access to our settlement. He learns our methods. He sees how we've integrated with Earth. He gathers data that demonstrates this planet isn't simply inhabited, it's partnered with a civilization that understands it. And then? The gray-haired counselor asked. Then, he returns to his survey team with a full report. We make no demands about what he includes. We don't censor his observations. But we give him enough context that his report represents truth, not just data. They'll send diplomats, the scarred woman said. Negotiators. Eventually military. Probably. Chen agreed. But they'll come knowing we're here with the planet's consent. That we're not invaders to be displaced. It changes the calculus. Crix's mandibles clicked. I should clarify, the collective doesn't wage war over inhabited worlds. Our protocols forbid it. If I report human presence with established civilization, this planet becomes legally off-limits for colonization. Every human in the chamber stared at him. You're saying, the engineer said slowly, that all we have to do is prove we're here legitimately, and your people will leave us alone? Essentially, yes. Crix felt the weight of their attention like gravity. The collective has strict rules about first contact. We don't displace existing civilizations. We negotiate coexistence, or we move on. Then, why all the secrecy? The scarred woman demanded. Why hide from surveys in the first place? Chen answered before Crix could. Because we didn't know their rules. Because we've learned not to trust bureaucracies with our survival. Because 300 years ago, humans who followed the rules still ended up losing their homeworld. The chamber fell silent again. But this time, Crix heard understanding in the quiet. These people had been betrayed by their own institutions. Trust was a resource they'd exhausted before reaching this world. Maya squeezed Crix's arm. See? They just needed to know you're nice. I'm not. Crix started, then stopped. Nice was a translation approximation. Kind, perhaps. Non-threatening. Words that didn't match his self-image as an efficient survey scout. But the child's assessment carried a different weight here. She was their future, their hope. If she trusted him, maybe they could too. The gray-haired counselor stood. I move that we approve Commander Chen's proposal. 72 hours of controlled cultural exchange, with full council oversight of what information Scout Crix can access. Seconded. The engineer said immediately. Chen looked around the circle. All in favor? Hands rose. Not all of them. The scarred woman kept hers down, expression locked somewhere between anger and resignation. But the majority voted yes. Motion carries. Chen's shoulders relaxed fractionally. Scout Crix, you're officially Earth's first diplomatic guest. Try not to get eaten again. The next 72 hours rewrote everything Crix thought he knew about planetary colonization. Maya appointed herself his guide, with 2 guards shadowing them at a careful distance. She showed him the settlement's water reclamation system, a network of channels that worked with Earth's natural hydrology rather than against it. The planet moved water where it was needed, and the humans simply collected what was offered. We asked if we could drink. Maya explained as they stood beside a clear pool. Earth said yes, but only if we gave back what we didn't need. So we built filters that make our waste water clean again before returning it. Crix analyzed the pool with his repaired scanner. The water was pristine, mineral-balanced, alive with microbial life that kept the ecosystem stable. This should take massive energy input. Pumps, purification plants, chemical treatment. Earth does most of it, Maya said. We just help a little. One of the guards, Lieutenant Morrison, Crix had learned, spoke up. The planet filters groundwater through specific mineral layers based on our needs. We mapped the process, figured out what it was offering, and built our infrastructure to accept that gift instead of forcing our own solution. Cooperation, Crix said. Survival, Morrison corrected. We tried it the hard way first. Built pumps, drilled wells. Earth shut them down. Collapsed the tunnels, corroded the machinery. It took Commander Chen 3 months to realize the planet wasn't attacking, it was teaching. They walked to the agricultural zones next. Crops grew in spiral patterns that looked random but matched the underground root networks Earth had developed over millennia. Humans had planted seeds. The planet had shown them where. Maya danced between the rows, touching leaves with casual affection. Everything grows better when Earth helps. We tried straight lines like on old Earth. Nothing worked. Then Mama said we should watch where things wanted to grow naturally, and now we have so much food we're storing it for winter. Crix documented everything. Plant yields, water efficiency, energy consumption that was a fraction of what the collective's colonies required. The data painted a picture his analysts would struggle to believe, a civilization that had achieved sustainability through submission to planetary will. That night, Maya's guards brought Crix to the Singing Rocks. They were a formation near the settlement's northern edge, crystalline structures that resonated with subsonic frequencies. Maya sat among them, humming. The rocks answered, harmonizing with her voice in ways that made Crix's antennae vibrate. Earth remembers music, she said. It used to hear the wind all the time, before the wind changed. Now it hears us, and it likes that we sing. How do you know what it likes? Crix asked. Maya looked at him like he'd asked why water was wet. It tells us. Not with words. But you can feel it. When Earth is happy, things grow better. When it's sad, the sand gets restless. When it's scared. She gestured at his scarred carapace. You know what happens when it's scared. The lieutenant sat nearby, weapon across her knees but posture relaxed. Takes most adults 6 months to feel it. The kids learned in weeks. Maya was conversing with geological formations before she could write her own name. I'm good at listening, Maya said proudly. Crix spent an hour recording the resonance patterns. His scanner identified complex harmonic structures that matched nothing in collective databases. This wasn't random geology. This was communication, or something close enough that the distinction didn't matter. On the second day, Commander Chen took over the tour. She showed him the defensive installations. Not weapons, the collective had been right about that. Humans had built no orbital platforms, no missile batteries. But they'd developed something more subtle. Earth doesn't like violence, Chen explained as they stood at an observation point overlooking the settlement. But it understands threats. When the first raiders came, pirates looking for easy salvage, we didn't fight them directly. We asked Earth to hide us. Crix followed her gesture to the landscape below. Now that he knew what to look for, he could see how the settlement blended into natural terrain. Rock formations that were actually buildings. Crop patterns that looked like native vegetation from altitude. Water features that matched the planet's existing hydrology so perfectly that orbital scans would classify them as natural. Complete camouflage, he said. Active cooperation with a planetary defense system. Chen corrected. The raiders landed. Earth relocated their landing site 3 kilometers into a box canyon. By the time they figured out what had happened, we'd disappeared entirely. They left thinking they'd made a navigation error. You've been under threat before. Twice. Both times resolved without firing a shot. Chen's expression hardened. We don't want to fight, Scout Crix. But we won't roll over for claim jumpers either. This world chose to accept us. That makes us partners, not squatters. The third day, Maya took him to the memory pools. They were thermal springs in a volcanic region, water so hot it steamed in the morning air. But the heat wasn't what made them special. Humans had built a monument here, a wall of names carved into stone that Earth itself had shaped. Everyone who died on the journey, Maya said quietly. Everyone who didn't make it to see our new home. We told Earth about them, and it made this place so we could remember together. Crix read the names. Hundreds of them. More than the current settlement population. These refugees had paid in blood for their sanctuary. Chen stood beside the wall, hand pressed against the stone. We lost 60% of our people between leaving old Earth and landing here. Equipment failures. Disease. Accidents. When we finally found this world, we barely had enough survivors to maintain genetic diversity. She turned to Crix. That's why we hide. Not because we're ashamed. Because we can't afford to lose anyone else. Maya leaned against her mother. Earth promised to help us survive. We promised to make it less lonely. That's the deal. Crix's chronometer showed 8 hours until his mandatory return to the survey ship. The 72 hours had evaporated like water on hot sand. He'd gathered enough data to fill a dozen reports. Enough evidence to prove human presence, to demonstrate their integration with the planet, to show the collective that this world was far more than an empty rock. But data didn't capture everything he'd learned. I need to make my final check-in, he said. And I need to decide what to tell them. Chen nodded. Let's go back to the command center. You'll make your report from there. They walked in silence, Maya between them. The child had stopped chattering, sensing the gravity of the moment. This was the hinge point. Everything Crix said in the next transmission would determine whether Earth remained a hidden refuge or became a case study in first contact protocols. The command center was smaller than Crix expected. A single room with communication equipment and holographic displays showing settlement status. Chen's staff moved efficiently, their economy of motion speaking to long practice under resource constraints. A communications officer gestured to a station. Secured channel established. Your survey team is standing by. Crix sat. His hands trembled slightly, stress response his species hadn't evolved past. He looked at Chen. Any final instructions? Tell the truth, she said simply. All of it. Maya hugged his arm one last time. Don't forget to tell them about the singing rocks. That's important. Crix activated the transmission. His team leader's face appeared on the screen, antennae perked in alert attention. Scout Crix reporting. I have significant findings to relay. Acknowledged. Transmit your data. Crix took what humans would call a deep breath. Survey World Designation Lambda 7 is not uninhabited. Indigenous human colony detected, population estimated 300. But that's secondary to the primary discovery. He pulled up his geological scans. The planet itself exhibits properties consistent with planetary scale awareness. Reactive geology, adaptive chemistry, organized defensive responses to perceived threats. His team leader's antennae flattened. Confusion. Clarify. You're reporting sentient geology? I'm reporting a living planet that communicates through geological processes and has entered into a mutual partnership with human colonists. Crix transmitted everything: the singing rocks, the water systems, the adaptive agriculture, the attack on himself, and Earth's response to Chen's command. Recommend immediate classification change. This world is not available for standard colonization. It requires specialized first contact protocols. Silence on the other end. Then, Scout Crix, your biometric readings suggest stress-induced cognitive impairment. Recommend immediate extraction and medical evaluation. Negative. My cognition is clear. I'm transmitting comprehensive documentation. Crix sent his 72 hours of recordings. Human colonists have achieved integration with planetary systems through cooperation protocols. They've developed methods of coexistence that exceed anything in our databases. Impossible. No previous survey has detected life capable of planetary-scale coordination. Then, our survey protocols are inadequate. Crix heard the certainty in his own voice. Team leader, I formally request that Lambda 7 be flagged for specialist evaluation. The humans call this world Earth, and it has stories to tell that we need to hear. Maya squeezed his hand. Chen watched from the corner, expression unreadable. The team leader's antennae twitched through several confusion patterns. Your report will be forwarded to the Collective Council. Maintain position until further notice. Acknowledged. Crix ended the transmission and sat back. It's done. Will they listen? Chen asked. I don't know. Honest answer. But they'll investigate. They have to. I've submitted evidence that contradicts every assumption about uninhabited worlds. Maya beamed at him. You told them we're friends with Earth. That's good. That's uncertain. Lieutenant Morrison muttered from the doorway. But Chen smiled. Actual warmth reached her eyes this time. You took a risk, Scout Crix. Challenged your own people's procedures. That takes courage. Or foolishness. Crix flexed his scarred carapace. In 3 days, I've violated more protocols than in my entire career. But I can't report what I haven't seen. And what I've seen here. He gestured at the settlement visible through the command center windows. This is important. Not just for your people. For mine. For any species that thinks they can take what they want from the universe without asking first. The next hours blurred into waiting. Crix remained in the command center, monitoring his team's communications. Chen's staff worked around him with practiced efficiency. Maya stayed close, drawing pictures of the singing rocks and explaining their music to anyone who would listen. When the response came, it wasn't what anyone expected. Scout Crix, this is Collective Council oversight. A different voice, older, carrying more authority. Your report has been reviewed. We're dispatching a specialist team to Lambda 7, estimated arrival 72 hours. You are ordered to maintain current position and provide diplomatic liaison with indigenous population. Chen's eyebrows rose. They're sending diplomats? And xenobiologists. And probably a few dozen analysts who think I've lost my mind. Crix felt something that might have been hope. But they're coming to talk, not to claim. That's progress. That's terrifying, Morrison said. We'll have alien ships in orbit, and no way to control what happens next. Yes, Chen said. But we'll have Crix here to translate. To explain. To bridge the gap. She looked at the scout. Think you can handle being humanity's first alien ambassador? Crix thought about the sand trying to eat him. About Maya's trust and Chen's command of a living planet. About 72 hours that had transformed his understanding of what colonization could mean. I think, he said carefully, that I don't have much choice. But if the alternative is watching your people get classified as obstacles to resource extraction. He straightened in his seat. I'll do everything I can to make sure the collective understands what you've built here. Maya clapped her hands. You're staying. That means I can show you the underground gardens, and the place where Earth makes crystals, and 3 days, Maya. Chen said gently. He has 3 more days. Then, his people arrive, and we see what happens next. The child's enthusiasm dimmed slightly but didn't extinguish. 3 days is enough to show you the best parts. Come on. She pulled Crix toward the door. The scout looked back at Chen, question in his posture. The commander nodded. Go. Learn. You're going to need every piece of evidence you can gather when your council arrives. So Crix let himself be led back into the settlement, into the partnership between humanity and Earth, into 3 more days of discoveries that would reshape collective policy for generations. Behind them, Chen watched through the command center windows as her daughter showed an alien scout the wonders of a planet that had learned to love again. Lieutenant, she said quietly, prepare the council. We have 3 days to decide how much we're willing to reveal to the collective. And if they don't like what they see? Chen's expression hardened into the mask of command. Then, Earth will remind them why you don't threaten people who've made friends with a living planet. Outside, Maya's laughter echoed across the settlement as she and Crix ran toward the crystal gardens. For a moment, the future's weight lifted. For a moment, there was only joy. But the collective ships were coming. And Earth was waiting to see what kind of visitors they would be.